what happened when we applied the framework to an existing customer's program. As a disclaimer, for legal reasons, this example we were walking through is a fictional company. So Unicorn Tech, we'll call it, is a large tech company that came to us with an existing program in a different LMS. And they already knew what they wanted to get out of their program on our platform because they weren't getting it with their previous product. So they weren't starting from scratch here. Through their previous LMS, one of their issues was that they weren't seeing the level of engagement that they really wanted. First, they knew that they needed to get people into the system because that's where the customer education program lives. And the way they did this was by making them log into the portal prior to any product use. Also, from a data perspective, they were already pulling reports into a dashboard. They weren't starting from scratch here. But as you've heard me say, completions do not equal engagement. When measuring completion, you really have to cross-reference completions with other metrics. That's what I mean when I say pull all the data. We're not just looking at all the data within the LMS, we're looking at all of the data that you can collect. So we added a basic gamification element. And what we were able to do with this is see an increase in completions. However, again, because we're looking at all of the data, that increase in completions was not what we were trying to solely accomplish. We were trying to also accomplish an increase in NPS score and a decrease in support tickets. And we weren't seeing that. We were only seeing an increase in completions. Furthermore, we weren't seeing a big difference between the completion of content with gamification and the completion of content without it. So by looking at all of the data, we actually pivoted and went a step further and we applied a currency-based gamification system. And so the hypothesis was that by giving them something tangible, not just points, they would be absorbing the content and not just completing it. They would be further incentivized to consume the content and interact with the system. So it still was encouraging content completion, and we're still assuming that this is happening through the completion. However, they're further interacting with the system and receiving something tangible through this incentive program. Then we went a step further and we assessed the content itself. We diversified the offerings and we went from a very text-heavy content and we introduced things like video and live webinars and simulations. And the important part of this step is that the content type delivered was informed by the learner persona rather than the marketing audience. And we really expand on that in our methodology. When we're talking about who our audience is and our personas, we have the misconception that the sales team is a learner persona, but the sales team is not a learner persona. It's a marketing audience. And we need to look even further and say, we have seasoned sales people who have made several large sales. And then we have new salespeople who are really novice to the entire experience. Also, some of our newer ones, maybe by default, are younger. So we've got a younger audience. And then we have an older audience. And the older audience likes knowledge-based articles, but the younger audience really wants to engage with the community. So we really have to look at the different types of content by looking at the learner persona and creating different types of content based on the persona and not just the audience. And that's a big part of our Intellum methodology. So what happened? We saw dramatic success. There was an increase in the NPS score. There was an increase in certifications, so content certifications. There was an increase of engagement in the system. And we know this by things like people engaging with their profile. They were updating their picture. They were adding to non-required fields like LinkedIn. And then they were even doing things like following topics and engaging in content that was not even product specific and wasn't gamification based. And then we also saw a decrease in support tickets, things that were our goals. There was the what we had identified. We saw that. And then a big bonus win is that we actually introduced Tribe Chat during our live webinars. And this created a community. It increased the community amongst the learners, so much so that people were creating their own groups within the system. And then what this also did is increase the time inside the platform. So from the beginning, we knew we needed to get users into the platform, but how did we keep them there? And how did we get them to come back? Well, all of these things that we implemented created this. Now, I will say, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying by doing all of this, we can guarantee dramatic outcomes by correctly mapping your measurements to your objectives. But because this is a repeatable, measurable process, the research supports that by building a strategy and identifying your objectives and allowing your data to tell the story, you will see an impact on your business.